Hi there, I'm Joe Pardavila from Advantage Forbes Books. The Specialist Pipeline book is written for both specialists, managers of specialists, and the human resource function who is often the driving implementation of the specialist pipeline concept within their organization. In this interview, I've invited Kent Jonassen, author of the Specialist Pipeline book and CEO of Leadership Pipeline Institute, to put some more words on how this book can support the HR function in their work. Kent Jonassen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Kent, let's get into human resources, who get, for some reason get a bad rap these days. I feel like human resources, they've become such an important part of a company, especially since the pandemic, and you've seen them rise. For many, many years, HR was a butt of many jokes. On the TV show The Office, the HR officer was the foil of the company. But because of the pandemic, we've seen how important HR is to the culture and a company, correct?
That's for sure, and I mean also they do a lot to rebrand themselves. I don't know if they changed the word much, but now it's people experience officer and so on. So you can change this human resource into many different things.
Yeah.
But I think there are different roles. There are different roles in human resources, and some of them just play a role where it's normally not good things that they deal with, not due to them, but due to whatever is in the company.
Yeah.
But sometimes that dominates the conversation about human resource. I think it's not fair, in my opinion, anyway.
No, absolutely, and obviously with the aforementioned pandemic, you saw how they were able to rise to the occasion and were able to help the transition for people to work from home and continue the culture of the company. So let's talk about how that ties into the book. How does a human resources officer, what can they take away from reading the Specialist Pipeline book?
Yeah, I think what it really gives them, to a large extent, first of all, the fundamental understanding of how can I start structuring a specialist pipeline the same way that they have done with the people manager pipeline for the past 10 or 20 years. So that's the first thing that they can get out of this. The second thing is we have tried to be a bit specific in a couple of chapters about implementation strategies, implementation practices, what are the typical pitfalls and so on. So I think one thing is, hey, we would like to have this. Okay, that's great. But what you also get by reading the book is some kind of a guideline on how to avoid the worst pitfalls and how to get started effectively in the organization with this.
All right, so let's dig into that, the implementation strategy. How does the book deal with that?
So when you look at the implementation here, there are certain things that can stand in the way from an effective implementation. And one of the things is history. We already have a title structure. We realize that it actually now stands in the way from what we have. How can you bridge these two things? Because if you start having them competing and fighting against each other, then you're not going to be successful in the implementation. Another thing is, but could we tie the structure to our job grading system, whatever job grading system well, you know what, job grading systems are great and they can be used for compensation benchmarks and so on, but maybe you don't want to intervene in job grades versus specialist pipeline and so on. So some of these basic things, how can you avoid making these basic mistakes that we have seen many places? They'll get some guidance to that in the book. That's the negative side. Then there's also the positive side. How do you build a business case around actually doing these things, right?
And well, let's go into that. Give me some of those examples, how to build that.
Yeah, well, it's most people we have experienced who have read some of either the book or some of the chapters of the book. I must say the immediate reaction is we need this. Okay, good start. But the next step is then, but how do we convince the organization that we should do it? And then it comes down to the business case part. And as a human resource function, just like all other functions, we have to build our business case. What could it be as an example? We have a fierceful fight for a specialist. We're not able to attract, we lose too many, etc. Put some money on that. What does it cost to hire? What does it cost to lose? What does it cost to do this implementation? Okay. Another thing is we want to break down our hierarchies in the organization. That could be a more transformational agenda. How can you tap into that transformational agenda? Well, you can do that with this, because if you enable the specialists to operate on their own, then you can cut out layers of the organization. You don't want decisions to walk up, over, down, up, over, back. You don't want that. You want decisions to be made down here. But then you have to enable people at that level to operate effectively there. If you just say, now you can make the decisions, they're not trained to operate themselves. They're trained to operate through the managers.
Yeah.
So you have to change that part. So this is another example so there are different things that you can tap into the organization, getting the business case in place for doing this.
And HR finally has a seat at the table for a lot of companies. For many, many years, HR was always in the background. Now they've gotten a seat at the table where they're involved in the decision-making processes at companies. If an HR manager were to get a copy of this book, how would they be able to sell the concepts of the specialist pipeline to the other leaders? Because now they finally have a seat. For years, they've been fighting to get that seat. Now they've got that seat. But what can they tell their other people in their senior leadership, C-suite folks, the importance of this?
Yeah. The funny thing is, we have actually experienced that for HR, it's easier to sell in the specialist pipeline thinking than the leadership pipeline thinking.
Really?
Well, the thing is, when you come in with the leadership pipeline, who makes the decision of this? Leaders. But when you come in with the leadership pipeline, then leaders start reading and say, am I sure that I can actually live up to these expectations? Am I comfortable with this? Am I able to let go of that? And am I able to change? Whereas when it's just the specialists, oh yeah, of course they should do this and they should change and so on. So sometimes it's actually easier because that's the other people. Whereas leaders, oh boy, that's myself too. So it has been easier. But having said that, even if it's easy, I would advise HR, don't pick the easy straw. Take the hard way and build the business case. Find this strategic agenda that you can tap into in the organization. Find that agenda, because that's what's going to make it last. Whereas the cheap straw, the easy straw, that's going to get you going. But then 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, you can often hear this thing, but haven't we done this now? No, you don't do this in 6 months' time. This is a cultural change in the organization. But then they lose interest. Whereas if it's tied into a real business challenge, then they never lose interest. And back to your point about HR getting to the table. Those HR people who get to the table are those who operate with business cases, are those who tap HR function into the business strategy. Whereas those HR folks who are still left a little out are often those who can step into this business context. So actually, either way, it's an easy sell quite often, easy straw, but I'd rather go the hard way and get this business case in place.
Interesting. And why do you think that is the hard way? Why do you think the business case is the hard way?
Well, sometimes if you could just go in and get a budget and then get started on things 1 year, why not do it? And you can actually get that here because you have these specialists, and everybody knows that the specialists have been alienated over the past 10, 20 years. All the focus has been on the people managers in most companies by far. So it's an easy win, but you get the budget 1 year. You may not get it the second and the third and the fourth year. That requires that you have to get in and say, hey, let's build the business case. But the business case, the challenge is with a business case, then you're also going to be measured. Are you delivering success now? And that's why I say it's just more challenging. Hey, it's great, it's cool, and who wouldn't want to do that? Well, I have met a lot of people who don't want to be measured too much, I should say. I think that would be cool if you can deliver a success. You can deliver a success with this. Big, medium, but you can deliver success with this, I'm sure. But it's more dangerous when all of a sudden people are going to hold you accountable for this. I can give an example.
Yeah.
So we do these specialist transition programs, and there you can do impact measurements. We do have clients who say, no, thank you. Because we say, but look, that's cool, because then you can measure the impact. Yeah, but what if it's not good? I say, yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Then you fire us again, first of all. So it's not good for us either. But if you look at our history in other companies,
it works.
But still, it's a little dangerous because, then I have numbers. And here we are talking HR. I have a good colleague in another company. He provides a system that measures strategy implementation success.
Okay.
There are many CEOs who don't want it. But shouldn't they want to measure? The challenge is if they got the number, then they have to show it to the board. Then it's maybe better not to have the number. So the hard way is create a business case, say this is where we're going to be in 6, 12, 18, 36 months. This is how we're going to measure success. That's the harder way. I'm just saying it's also the most sustainable way in an organization. But of course you can test it out. You could take one function as an HR. You could take one function and say, let's do a trial in here in a safe environment. And before you spread it out, that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, I think it's a good idea to build this business case, and it's not too hard.
I never thought the word dangerous would come up in our conversations here.
Right?
It happens.
Well, it's a dangerous book.
I love it.
Yeah.
The book is The Specialist Pipeline. He is Ken Jonassen. Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.